If this is your first time installing our bifold doors, please take time to read the entire installation guide before proceeding. Step 1. Carefully open the shipping container and look for any damaged parts. All Monterey orders come completely fabricated and assembled, ready for glazing. Compensating channels and flush sills are supplied approximately 6 inches oversized for field cutting to match actual job conditions. A packing list and configuration drawing are included in the shipment for your reference. All parts are labeled with corresponding numbers for easy identification. Step 2. Verify that the rough opening is as square and plumb as possible. Compensating channels for use at the head and jamb are supplied with your order. These will assist you with any problematic openings. The compensating frame can compensate for any out-of-square situations up to about 1/4 of an inch or 6 millimeters. When you're adjusting your compensating channel, make sure to shim this within the maximum. Step 3. Verify floor and header condition. The floor and header surface of the rough opening should be clean and in good condition. The Monterey bifolding door system mounts directly to the rough opening header and must be able to support the system's weight and firmly hold the fasteners in place for the lifetime of the installation. For flush sill configurations, it's necessary to cut a groove in the floor to accept the underside of the flush sill. Raised sill configurations come standard with a sub-sill that is attached directly to the sill or rough opening. In both cases, the sill must be installed perfectly level to ensure proper operation, and in the case of exterior applications, to ensure proper water drainage. Glazing the panels. Lay the pre-assembled door frame on a horizontal table or sawhorse with the glass cavity and vinyl facing up. Place the glass panel in the frame and center all around. You'll receive enough 1/8 inch and 1/4 inch corner glazing blocks to shim the panels. You can use these in any combination to get the correct spacing. Install the glazing blocks in opposite corners. The top glazing block should be placed in the corner opposite the roller assembly side, and for panels hinged on a jamb, the top shim goes opposite the jamb hinge or wall side. There will be a green dot on the panel frames designating the correct corner for your glazing blocks. These are also located and identified on your configuration drawing. Check the glass panel to make sure that it is securely held in place by the glazing blocks. It should have no lateral movement. Then install the glass stops on all 4 sides. Now each stop is a little bit different depending on the thickness of glass you're going to be installing in your panels. But each stop has an inner leg and a top leg that goes against the glass. You want to engage the inner leg or the bottom leg first. Then you're going to snap in the top leg. Now this will illustrate how to put the glass stops on your panels. First you're going to set your glass. Then you're going to take your glass stop with the long inner leg and engage it into the channel. Then while pushing down on the stop, pull it in and snap the top leg in place. You want to put in the top and bottom stops first, then the long sides. Starting at one of the top corners, you'll want to roll in the glazing vinyl. The doors are labeled on the top of the inside rail. You want to notch the vinyl at each corner and make sure that you end in the top corner. Your Monterey system will come cut to size, except for the compensating channels and the bottom sill track. These will be about 6 inches longer than you have in your plan. You'll want to measure and cut these to size in the field. Now we're going to be installing the flush sill for the Monterey system. Now you want to make sure that the groove in your floor is correct. It needs to be 1.5 inches wide by 7/8 of an inch deep. If it's a little bit too deep, you can shim it up. Now you want to make sure that your bottom sill goes from wall to wall. Now it does come in 20-foot lengths, but oftentimes you're going to have to put a seam in the middle. Now you want to make sure if you do have a seam that you shim it underneath on both sides. You want to start your screws 3 inches in from the end and run them about every 20 inches. You also want to shim under each area where there's going to be a screw. And if the opening is a little bit wider than you'd like, you want to make sure you get at least a 1/2 inch coverage on the lip of the sill track. Now we're going to start by setting the sill. You want to make sure that that's marked in the correct location. Then you want to strike a line, so when you're screwing the sill down, you'll make sure that it's nice and straight, especially if you have some type of a joint in the middle. First, drill your holes in the sill track. These should be spaced every 20 inches. You'll want to start 3 inches in from the end. Once you make sure that your track is lined up correctly, simply drill a pilot hole into the concrete. This will help you locate your anchors. Remove your sill track and drill your anchor holes into the concrete. Then add your anchors. Now after you've pre-drilled your holes and placed your anchors where they need to be, simply put the track in and we're going to screw it down. Now if this was an exterior installation, you would want to run some type of caulking underneath the flush sill to seal out any moisture. You'd also need some type of exterior drain in front of the flush sill to collect any water and carry it away from the panel system. Make sure that you have shims under the track where you're going to be adding a screw. You do not want to over-tighten these screws. Now when you're fashioning down your flush sill, you want to make sure that you don't over-tighten the screws. That's why it's important that you shim it up correctly underneath. If you over-tighten them, this can cause a little distortion in the track, and then your bottom guide won't work smoothly. So you want to make sure you bring one of your guides with you. If you tighten down the track and you sense a little binding, simply loosen up the screw a little bit to make sure that that distortion gets taken out of the sill track. Now when you're using the flush sill, you want to make sure that the long leg points to the opposite direction of where the panels will be stacking. So if the panels are going to stack inside like we are in this installation, you want to make sure that that long leg is going in the opposite direction. Now we're ready for the top compensating channel. Now first you want to cut it to the correct length. The compensating channel will come about 6 inches longer than the opening dimension that you sent to us. Now we have to locate it, and we're going to do that by lining up our laser. Right here, there's a little edge where the bottom sill track starts to taper off, and you want to line that edge up with how we're going to locate it in the ceiling. Now we're going to install the top compensating channel. We've already marked the ceiling and cut it to length. Now we're going to start the first screw about 3 to 6 inches in from the end, and then place your screws about every 16 to 24 inches. Now you want to stagger your screws, one on the left side, then one on the right side, to keep the compensating channel from twisting. Now we're going to mount the side compensating channel. This will come also cut about 6 inches longer than the dimensions that you gave us. And again, you want to measure from the bottom sill to the bottom of your top compensating channel and cut it at the correct dimension. Then you simply want to line it up. Again, you're going to put your fastener starting 3 to 6 inches from the top and the bottom, and then about every 16 to 20 inches as you mount it. And again, if you can, you may want to stagger these left to right. The compensating channel is not a load-bearing component. Your screws are just there to hold the channel firmly in place without any twisting. The compensating channel comes with the gasket already applied on the wall and ceiling side. Now the compensating channel is used to compensate for any outage in your opening. Now the outage can't be any more than 1/4 of an inch in any direction. You can see here there's a gap between the compensating channel and the wall. We're simply going to fasten that directly onto the wall, and then our side jamb will be compensated for that outage. So that gives you a nice tight fit once that's fastened in place. Now we'll put the compensating channel on the other side. Once your compensating channel has been installed, you want to go back and measure from the top of your sill to the bottom of the top compensating channel. If this dimension agrees with your drawing, then you need a 7/8 inch shim to put on the head track. If it doesn't, you want to adjust the shims accordingly. Okay, now we're ready to put up the top track. Before we put it up, we want to make sure that it's been shimmed out correctly based on the measurements that you took from each end and in the center. It's very important that the top track is level as well as the sill track so that your doors are going to operate correctly. Now when you're putting the top track in, you want to make sure that the long leg faces in the opposite direction of where your panels are going to be folding. So in this case, we're going to be folding our panels into the room away from the front here. So we want to make sure that the long edge is in the front and the panels will stack to the other side. You can also line it up on the floor. The long edge is going to be on the same side as the wider side of the bottom sill. Also, we have our notch in the top track for putting in our rollers. This is in the stacking side, so the area where all the panels are going to be stacked when the system is open is where you want to make sure that your roller notch is. Also, once you put the track in place, you want to make sure that you put your screws about 6 inches from the wall and every 6 inches for the area where we're going to have the panels stacking. Now this is usually within 12 to 24 inches of the wall, and then after that you're going to put your screws every 12 to 16 inches. You want to make sure that your fasteners are designed to hold the system in place for the life of the system. You want to make sure that you angle this because it's cut to the right length, and then slide it up into the compensating channel. It actually floats in the channel, giving you the ability to shim it about 1/4 of an inch to make sure that it's level across the top. When you're putting the top track in, first you want to put 3 fasteners in, one at each end and one in the middle, and then go back and remeasure to make sure your opening is correct. If it's not correct, you want to loosen those 3 screws, adjust your shims, and tighten it back up in place. This measurement is important because you need to have the opening correct for the panels to slide correctly. On the hinge jamb, we have adjustable spacers that are installed in the factory. There's one hole on this side to get access to the spacer. Then you can see you can adjust this back and forth to compensate for any outage. The spacer should be set at 3/8 of an inch to start off. On the hinge side, you can set the spacer at 3/8 of an inch, and if you have any outage in your opening, you can compensate that on the other side by adjusting the adjustable spacer. Next, we're going to test fit the hinge jamb. You need to engage the top first, then slide it up in place. Make sure you lift it up so you don't scratch the bottom sill. That slides right into the compensating channel. Once it's in place, we're going to mark where we need to drill the holes, take it back out, drill the holes, and then install it. If your dimensions match the drawing that we sent, you simply adjust your spacers out 3/8 of an inch. You can also adjust it a little bit more up to 1/4 of an inch in either direction if you need to compensate for more of an outage. You simply do that by putting your Allen wrench in the slot, twisting it back and forth until you have your jam in the correct position. What we're doing right now is we're putting the laser in the jam to make sure that it's completely straight and it's going to be level. Next, we're going to adjust the adjustable spacer. That'll adjust in and out until the hinge jam is in the correct position. Okay, now we're going to install the latch jam. Now the latch jam works the same way as the hinge jam. We have our adjustable spacers. We want to adjust these to basically 3/8 of an inch. Then we're going to put it in place and we're going to measure the opening. Now, if the opening is correct, we'll screw it in place. You can do a micro adjustment afterwards by opening your system, loosening your screws, adjusting those adjustable spacers if you need any kind of micro adjustments, and then locking it back down. Again, you want to put the top in first. Slide it into your compensating channel, and then slide it up so you're not scratching your bottom sill. Now we're going to measure at the bottom. You want to measure your opening to make sure it matches your drawing. If the jam needs to be adjusted, use your Allen wrench to adjust the adjustable spacer until you're at the correct dimension. Now I'll measure it again across the top. When we feel comfortable the dimension's correct, we'll screw it in place. We'll put a fastening screw in the top and then in the bottom. The fastening screw goes right through the middle of your adjustable spacer. Once it's fastened top and bottom, we'll adjust the spacers in the middle to make sure the dimension's correct. You don't want to over-tighten these, just make sure they're firm. Then we'll put in our final 2 fasteners. We use 4 fasteners spaced evenly. Now next we're going to put in our top rollers. Now you want to make sure that the offset on the top rollers is facing the stacking side of your system or the hinge side on your jam. Now the roller has 2 set screws, one at the top and one on the side, as well as your hinge bolt. Now when you put the hinge bolt in, when that gets adjusted properly, You're going to take your Allen wrench and tighten down on the set screw on the top, and then we're also going to tighten the set screw on the side, locking that hinge in place. Again, we want to make sure that the offset is to the stacking side of the system. Go up to our roller notch and slide it in. Now you have to place all your rollers in before you start putting in your panels. Make sure that you do this, because once your first panel is in, you won't have access to this notch after that. Now we're going to add our first hinge panel. We're going to take our hinge pin, which has a serration at the top. After we put the panel in place and join the hinges, this will be driven down from the top, making sure that that serration is flush with the top of your hinge. Now each one of our door panels will come numbered. There'll be a number at the bottom, and they'll be numbered from the hinge side over to the latching side. Now we're going to attach our CRL door jack to the panel. This will keep it stable, and with the adjustable height, you can make sure it's in the correct location. Now we're going to roll the panel in place. They're going to put our CRL glass jack on the suction cup, and this will make it easy for you to lift the panel and adjust it to the right height. Now we're going to put some shims in to hold the panel at about a 45-degree angle. Now we're going to move panel number 2 in place. I will raise the panel up. Slide the pins in to hold the panel in place. Again, you want to make sure that the serrated end is up, and just slide them in hand tight for now. We'll drive them in all the way after all the panels are in place. Now we're going to roll the door in place and add the top roller and the bottom guide. Okay, now we're going to line up the height of the door to match the top roller. Now there's a little bit of a gap here, so we're going to use the CRL door jack to raise that up so that our hinges will line up with the top of the roller. All right. Now the panel's in place. Now we're going to put some shims in place to hold that panel while we get the next panel ready. Now we're going to attach the bottom guide. We're going to slide that into the track and line it up under the bottom hinge, and then put in our threaded hinge bolt. Now you want to make sure on this bolt that you don't loosen that bottom set screw, which this bolt is locking into. If you loosen that, it can get lowered and start scraping against the track on the bottom. Now we'll attach the top roller, again by pushing the threaded hinge bolt up through the hinges. And screwing it into the top roller. Now we'll attach the next inner panel the same way, lining up the hinges and sliding in the hinge pins. Once your roller is aligned to the top, just slide your bottom guide into the track and then center it under your bottom hinge. Now we're going to attach the latching panel. We're going to line this up just like we did the inner panels. Putting it in place. And then we'll raise it up using our Cyrel glass jack and suction cup. Make sure that you raise your panel to the correct height so your fixed hinge is just below your roller. Then you'll want to slide in your hinge bolt until it engages the roller and screw it in place. Screw this in firmly, but don't over-tighten. You can attach your handle at any time during the process. First, we'll slide the connecting through bolt through the door. Then we're going to connect the lever handle to that side. First, you want to slide the screw cover out of the way, exposing the screw holes. Line up your screw holes and fasten the 4 screws. First screw all 4 in lightly, then go back and tighten them. Then replace the snap-on cover. Now repeat this on the other side. After you have attached the handle, make sure that the handle and locks move freely. Now once the panels are installed, we're going to check the latching panel. In this case, the gap's a little bit too large. So what we're going to do is loosen the screws on the latching jamb, readjust the adjustable spacers, and then tighten it back up. And we're going to use the laser to make sure that we're nice and plumb going up the side. Now we're going to take the screws all the way out to get access to the adjustable spacers. Now we'll use the Allen wrench to adjust the jamb out 1/4 inch with the adjustable spacers. Again, we're using the laser to make sure that the line is plumb so that all 3 strikes will line up correctly. Now the installation went great. Now this is an interior installation. We used our S55 system. We also have an S80 system. Now the S55 system can be used interior or exterior, and it can be glazed with 1/4 inch, 3/8, or 1/2 inch monolithic glass or 1 inch insulating glass units. Now our S80 system is a thermally broke system, and that can be used with 1 inch insulating panels or 1.25 inch insulating panels. Now the system can be used on almost any size opening, but there are some limitations to the height and width of the panels. On an exterior system, the height limitation is 10 foot 6 inches. On interior systems, it's 13 feet 6 inches. The maximum panel width is 39 inches, and the maximum panel weight is 150 pounds. Now you can have multiple panels that can span and open in both directions or be broken up into different sections and all slid to one side. Now let's see how easy it is to open the system. We'll simply open the latching panel. Then we're going to pull gently on these levers and turn them to unlock the mid panels. Simply push that in. We'll do the same thing in the second system. And slide them in place. Now you can see how nice and tight they stack. Now also, all of your stacking weight is down this end of the system. That's why we have you put in these screws every 6 inches in that first 24 to 36 inches of the system.